Okay. Good evening. On behalf of the Abingdon, Virginia Town Council, I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 2015 regular session of the council. A couple of things I mentioned customarily prior to each meeting, one of which is that we ask everyone who has a cell phone on to either turn it off or put it on the quiet mode. I actually have remembered to do my own, so I have set an example for the rest of us tonight. I would also point out that prior to each meeting of the Abingdon Council, our staff prepared us some material to give us a review of the issues that we will be considering each night before the meeting. A copy of those documents is on the table to my left. You're more than welcome to review them, and so you'll also see the same documents that we have available. That being said, I'll ask our Assistant Town Manager and Clerk, a woman of many talents, Ms. Cecile Rosenbaum, if she'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jury.
Here.
Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Humphries.
Here.
Mrs. Lowe.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
Here.
And let the record reflect that all 5 council members are present.
Thank you. This evening we'll call upon Councilmember Rick Humphries to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If we'll all stand, please.
And stand and please pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Council, we have 2 sets of minutes that were provided for us this evening. We have the minutes of the February 2nd, 2015 work session, and also the February 2nd, 2015 regular meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be noted? Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion regarding the minutes.
Mr. Brown, I move that we approve both sets of minutes as presented.
Second to the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve both sets of minutes as presented. Any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Rosenbaum to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jury.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Thank you. It's customary at the beginning of our meetings to have employee recognition. That's to acknowledge both jobs well done and lengths of service from our town employees. And usually our town manager, Mr. Kelly, is the one that is handling that, and he's usually ably assisted by our assistant town manager and clerk, Ms. Rosenbaum. But I think tonight I'll handle that myself, and I'll call upon our assistant vice mayor, Ms. Kathy Lowe, to help me with that. And but I would ask for Mr. Kelly and Ms. Rosenbaum to come forward.
Well, I was prepared, Mr. Mayor, to say all kinds of good things about myself.
Oh, let me do that. No, I'm just.
All righty, come on down. Can you reach these things?
I can.
Well, again, as it was noted, over the years, you folks usually have several people to call upon and to acknowledge their length of service and their contributions to the town. And I know that Cecile was a bit hesitant to blow her own horn or to call herself to attention here, but I can't think of 2 more employees who are more deserving of recognition than both our town manager and our assistant town manager and town clerk for the contributions that they've made. First of all, being able to survive it for 10 years. And second, to make wonderful and positive contributions to our town. And I will say we hope that you will be with us not only for 10 years more, but maybe even longer than that. And with that being said, I believe I'll let you make the presentation, please.
So, Ms. Rosenbaum,
Thank you.
thank you for your 10 years of service. And I just want to say that since I've been here, I've watched Ms. Rosenbaum go from paralegal to clerk to now assistant town manager and president of the Virginia Municipal League Clerks Association. She has worked tirelessly to know what her job is and to know how to help lead the town and us in the proper direction. And I thank you for all of your efforts.
Very good. We can have a round of applause.
Kelly has, when we first hired Mr. Kelly, one of the requirements was that he get a degree in public administration. Well, after he'd been in the job for a little while, we were so busy, and I remember saying, you know what, that, you don't have to do that. We're just glad to have you. And Mr. Kelly insisted on continuing his education, and he got a master's degree
Master of Public Administration.
in public administration, and he is now the president of the Virginia Municipal League.
No, not quite.
I'm sorry.
Almost.
I'm sorry.
First vice president.
Tell me the name of the association.
Virginia Local Government Manager.
That's right. And so he will be the president next year, and they have both worked tirelessly to change professions, which isn't easy, I can tell you from experience, to change professions and to do an excellent job, and I commend both of you.
Thank you
And Ms. Duran, can you be the photographer
We're
tonight?
taking care, we got it covered, we got it covered.
Give a chair
Let's move
around.
up here a little bit so I don't have a microphone in my face here. Okay.
All right.
Oh. And, and,
Is there something?
John, you or somebody?
Group selfie.
Yeah, we need a picture
Yeah.
with the rest of the council, I think. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kathy, where do we want to, let's slide down in this general direction here.
You want to use this, John, or you? You got your own apps.
Well, it's technical, man, it's technical.
Okay,
Matthew's a good photographer, get up there, man.
I thought maybe I could just do a sketch. Can we sit, why don't you all slide down here a little bit
Standing behind
further
you?
so you're, can be, you don't have that podium in front of you. All right.
Matthew's backing you up.
All right, we're in good shape there.
He'll be planning on taking the picture for a while.
Take several.
Thank you.
All right.
That
we got it.
works.
We're here, right?
They are.
Okay, here we got it.
So congratulations on continuing your service.
Well, you're more than.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Good one. I'm gonna be
Yes,
asked to
you
do
surely
this.
may. I will give you every opportunity.
I want to thank you all. As a council, I think we have a very good council that tries to make wise decisions. Sometimes we talk about things, and they're very difficult decisions that you all have to reach. We don't always have the same ideas of how to reach those decisions, but I do think that the town council for the town of Abingdon makes some of the best decisions of any local government in the entire state of Virginia. I also want to say that my job is made easy because of having good people who are above me, and also having good people who are below me. One of the best things that a manager can do is surround himself with good, qualified, and competent people. And I feel very honored that I have a staff that I deem to be very qualified and competent. I'd also like to say, with regard to Ms. Rosenbaum, she's been with me since day one. And we've done lots of things, both in the legal arena when I was town attorney, and we've done lots of things since I've been town manager, and she's been clerk and now assistant town manager. I do think that Abingdon is in good shape, and I think we have lots of good things ahead of us, and that's not a tribute to me, it's a tribute to you, the council, and you, the staff, and I thank you.
Well, it's kind of you to spread the credit around, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the hard work and the vision and effort that both you and Ms. Rosenbaum have put into things. You know, it's we've had a good team. We've managed we've managed well over the last decade, and I remain very confident that 2015 is going to be a very good year for the town of Abingdon. I think good things are about to happen for us. Thank you very much, and we appreciate all of your service and everything that you've done for us. At this point in time, that brings us to consideration of bids. The first thing we have is a consideration of award of bid for the equipment replacement phase of the grit chamber replacement project at the Wolf Creek Water Reclamation Facility. And Ms. Rita Moore, where are you? Now,
He's very excited about talking about a great time.
well, you know, I would ask first of all, we did have our tour, I think this last year of the facility, and the council actually did get to see what a grit chamber was.
That's right.
It was pointed out to us that the day was coming that grit chamber needed to be replaced. But if you would take a half a minute and tell everybody what a grit chamber is.
A grit chamber is part of what we call our preliminary treatment. When wastewater enters into the headworks, it first goes through a bar screen. Then it enters into a grit chamber. Now, our grit chamber contains an auger and a bucket and chain drive system and what's called a grit classifier. The purpose of a grit chamber is to remove the inorganics like dirt, rock, silt. Because you want to, you want to remove that out of the system because it can do a lot of wear and tear and damage to pumps, to meters, to mixers, and so forth. So our grit chamber, the one in question, it was installed in 1991. It's close to 25 years old. We do have two grit chambers. We had one upgraded and replaced in 2005 when we had the upgrade of the plant. And this one has never been replaced or upgraded. And it has a lot of wear and tear, a lot of rust, a lot of corrosion, and it's time for it to be upgraded. What we do with our grit chambers, we run those one at a time and alternate them. So we always have a backup, and that is crucial because it is a critical piece of equipment. Because if a grit chamber goes down, you have no way to remove your inorganics, and you do not want that material going through the wastewater plant because it can do a lot of damage to other equipment. So we've been working with Doug Hudgens of CHA. We've also met with Mr. Kelly, and we had a bid documents created, and the bid advertisement went out, and we had one bid come in from Amwell. Amwell actually was the same company that provided the equipment for us back in 2005 for the other grit chamber. And we kind of separated the bid project just to kind of make it a little easier budget-wise to pay for it. So this bid process was just to purchase the equipment only. The next phase will be to hire a contractor and put that out to bid. So the bid came in from Amwell at $118,675, which was under the estimated bid of $126,800 from CHA. There was one alternate that we asked to include, which that includes some stainless steel aerators and diffusers. That's an additional $5,530, which would bring the total to, I believe, $124,205, which is still below the estimated bid. So I would ask the council to award the bid to Amwell.
All righty. Let's see, Mr. Kelly, this particular purchase, is it budgeted in this year's budget, or are we looking at next year?
We have lines in this year's budget that we can go into in terms of contingency lines and miscellaneous equipment lines that will cover this part of it. The second part, in terms of the construction phase, is something that you all will be hearing about at an upcoming budget work session to be budgeted for next year.
And we mentioned the construction phase. Is that sort of for the installation of this?
Yes,
or?
it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. The design and engineering work from CHA will be paid out of the current budget. I do have money budgeted for that. But yes, the remaining amount as far as the installation will come in the upcoming budget year.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'd also mention that Mr. Hudgens is working to try to obtain some grants from, I believe,
Mount
Mount
Rogers, yes.
PDC, which we're very hopeful of getting some grant monies
Yes.
that would go toward this project as well. I will say that Doug Hudgens has been very good in working with the town over the years and very capable of finding grant money. So
Yes.
we're optimistic that we'll get some funds kicked in by Mount Rogers.
Yes.
Why do you think you only got one bid?
Well, not many suppliers, manufacture this type of equipment. There was one other company that was going to bid, but from what I understand, the project was a little too small for them. And that's just unfortunately the type of business we're in, because sometimes it's even hard to find contractors who will take on a certain job like this. Either it's too small or too large, or they're just not in the wastewater installation.
So, Ms. Moore, and let me see if I get this correct.
Mhm.
You're saying that you want to purchase right now, 2014, 2015, and then the installation will take place when, do you think?
The installation will take place in 2015-16. Yes.
And then if you got grants, that would offset the money.
That would offset the installation,
Allowable
yes.
by those grant
Yes.
dollars.
Mhm. Yes. The bulk of it will come out of 2015-16 is what I'm requesting. The only thing right now budgeted to come out of 2014-15 is the design and engineering, and that is approximately $36,000. And I do have money budgeted for that. The remaining amount, the total project was $252,000 estimated by CHA. And they were I think they overestimated just to be on the safe side. So the bulk of that will come out of the 2015-16 budget if approved. And if we do get a grant, that will obviously offset that cost.
Okay. Are there other questions about this or comments? All right, council, what's your pleasure regarding this matter?
I'll make a motion, go ahead and approve the low bidder, or
I'll
the
second
bidder.
that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the low bid, which was a total bid of $124,205 by the Amwell Company.
And ask Mr., and if we could add on and have Mr. Kelly.
Authorize Mr. Kelly.
Authorize Mr. Kelly to approve all accompanying documents.
Okay, all right. So let's try this again. We have a motion by Mr. Howard to authorize the purchase of the new grit chamber from the Amwell Company for $124,205, and there may be some couple of cents in there as well, and to authorize Mr. Kelly to enter into the appropriate documents for this purchase. Is there any further comment or question, discussion about it? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your
Appreciate
continued good efforts. That brings us to item number J1, reports from town manager. Authorization of the town manager to enter into a contract for health insurance plan for town employees for the upcoming 2015-2016 plan year. This evening in the work session, we heard a report from our consultant, Mr. Sam Brown. And Mr. Kelly, what would be your thoughts about this matter?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Brown presented to you at the work session a proposal from the existing company that we have health insurance with, Local Choice, which indicated that there would be a 3.4% increase in premium this year, which I believe translates to about $48,000 over the full course of the year. He felt like that is the best that we could do under the circumstances and is quite low in comparison to other places that he is aware of. He also indicated that there might be some leave to negotiate further with them later on, but we do have to be in a position to authorize him to move forward with contracting by the 1st of April. So with that said, I would recommend that the council authorize me to enter into the new contract for fiscal year 2015-16 with Local Choice that has a 3.4% increase or a lesser increase if it can be negotiated.
And if you would enlighten us, if I recall correctly, the Local Choice, we would note for the record, is a program offered by the state of Virginia to municipalities.
That's correct.
Okay, and we've been with this program about 3 years now?
At least 3 years, and we've had very good results with this company, very minimal increases over the course of the last 3 years.
And the history of the service and everything has been good. Council, do you have any questions of Mr. Kelly regarding this matter? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we direct Mr. Kelly to
How about we authorize it?
authorize, yeah, I lost my words. Authorize Mr. Kelly to enter into an agreement with Local Choice and execute the proper documents for the contract for fiscal 2015-16.
For our employees' health insurance program.
Yes.
And I'll bet you our town clerk wearing that hat can make some good comprehensive sense out of that motion. But I think the gist of what we're trying to say, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize Mr. Kelly, our town manager, to enter into a contract with the Local Choice Insurance Program sponsored by the state of Virginia to provide for group health insurance coverage for our town of Abingdon employees for the 2015-2016 budget year. Is there any other questions or comments regarding this? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Drury?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, our next item, we have a consideration of a request to support an application to the Virginia Housing Development Authority by Theo's Ridge, Virginia LLC to redevelop parcel number 014, I can't read tonight, 014-4-3 located on Nicholas Street and currently owned by Venn Properties LLC. And we have Ms. Jen Serber and Mike Rush, who are representatives of this venture, here tonight to talk with us about it.
Hello, good evening.
Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, thanks for hearing us tonight, and I'm going to let Jen go ahead, and then I'll probably close up with a remark or two.
I started some pictures down here at the beginning. Matthew and I went out to the property this morning. Matthew took those, and we had them laminated and printed this afternoon. Just to give you an idea of what the property in question looks like on the interior. These are the apartments located on the corner of Nicholas and Trigg Streets, currently known as the Fairview. There isn't a sign. Fairview Apartments. As you can see, they're not in good condition at all. They're in abhorrent condition. Many of them unlivable, despite the fact that there are residents in many of them.
You're saying there's residents in there?
It's not in any of those units which are vacant, but we did take a couple pictures of the move. A couple of those are in move-in condition, according to the property manager. And for 2-bedroom units, they're charging $575, and folks are living there, paying that to be there. I'm here as a representative of my company, Serber Development Consulting, and my partners, Hegum Corporation out of Charlotte. We are proposing to submit an application for tax credits to the Virginia Housing Development Authority to acquire and rehabilitate this property, spending approximately $42,000 per unit. That's hard cost investment. We aren't asking for any money from the council, from the town. These are dollars that would be invested into improving the condition of the property. We would also provide for a small community building, which would include an on-site management office, a community room, and a playground. There's some children. We'd have about 7 3-bedrooms at the property. We aren't increasing the number of units. In fact, we're decreasing by 1. There are currently 36 units. We're proposing to go to 35, combining 2 of the existing 1-bedrooms into 1 3-bedroom unit. The Abingdon Redevelopment and Housing Authority has agreed to partner with us in that gym management would manage the property during the initial phase of compliance, which would be the first 15 years. If at the end of that initial compliance period, ARHA wanted to purchase the property, they could do so at no profit to the owner entity, and they would continue management. They would be providing 5 project-based vouchers at the property, although my understanding from those folks is that there are already currently 4 families living there who already have vouchers. So maybe 1 more family with a voucher would be added. The rest of the folks would pay market rent.
Would you explain what the voucher is?
Mike could better speak to that.
Those vouchers, you're familiar with those vouchers. Those vouchers are funded with HUD, and you administer them through Abingdon Redevelopment and Housing Authority,
right,
under the auspices of the town council, of course. Those are Section 8 vouchers, and they're called Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers. A client can take them to whatever housing is suitable as determined by a HUD inspection. So they could go.
This is designed for the disabled and.
Yes, right.
These 5 would be project-based.
Yeah, these would be project-based. In other words, what we want to do is we want to anchor this project as affordable housing in this community, and we want to improve we want to give the opportunity for Jen to improve the property, and the way for us to do that and make and assure that the units are affordable is to do it through the tax credit project, so that somebody else doesn't buy them and convert them to something that can't be afforded by the folks. As a matter of fact, she commented that the property's getting $575 a month. I think that you probably many of you know Jen and I have been before you before as a team. She's been she provided leadership for Abingdon Green, which is out next to the Senior Citizen Center, the development of that. Abingdon Village, which is now Highlands View, Abingdon Terrace, which is next to what was Abingdon Village. Her company also did Washington Court. It's on Stone Mill Road, and that's a real pretty project too. In addition to making these things look better, making them more livable, improving the quality of the housing, and of course it adds to the stock of affordable housing in Abingdon, and it does so in a way that assures the integrity of the surrounding neighborhoods. And so you don't ever have any of these projects that aren't at least as good or better than the surrounding housing. And I'd call one more to your attention right outside of Abingdon. We did a Sweetbriar project out near Abingdon Elementary as a subdivision, a beautiful subdivision of duplexes. If you were able to declare this project a revitalization area, and we can talk to you about the language of that, then Jen can move forward with the application and try to compete for these credits. Now, what you get with Jen Serber is you get one of the most successful people in the state at competing for these, and we're competing with people that have a whole lot more means and a whole lot, more suits and ties and all that. But at People Incorporated, Jen funded 17 of 19 projects. And since she's been working on her own, she's funded another 6 or 7, and I just think
13.
that...
13.
Okay. 6 and 7, okay. And so I just think that what we have is have the opportunity, when we started talking about how we could leverage her into a project like this. The clock was about to run out on us, and I thought that that if we were able to offer the project-based vouchers, that we could take a very bad development right now. We'll make it a very good one.
All right.
And then Abingdon Redevelopment Housing Authority will have right of first refusal after the Gem Corporation has managed it for 15 years. It doesn't mean we have to take it, but we can take it with basically no profit, and then the taxes owed on it.
But if they didn't, Gem Management would continue in the management of the property, and they are the folks who currently own and manage Washington Court out on Stone Mill Road, and I think...
And 2 in Damascus.
2 in
Woods
Damascus.
Landing and Oak Hill.
They do have 2 in Damascus, yes, sir. Yeah.
So, okay, so again, we have some apartments on Nicholas Street that are in need of some repair and upgrading and so forth. And I gather the gist of this is that there are some tax credits that are available that can basically be translated potentially into funds to use for the purpose of improving these things. Your desire is to have them developed as affordable housing for the local community, and if I'm understanding it correctly, that would include the potential for having housing for disabled individuals that would be available in there as well.
That's true. Of the 35 units, we would have 11 that would be universally designed. Those 2-story townhouses, we can't do UD because they're 2-story. All the bedrooms are upstairs, right. But all of those that have ground floor entrances would be UD. Of those 11, 5 would be fully 504 Type A units. So folks in wheelchairs,
handicapped accessible.
fully 504 Type A handicap accessible units.
Okay. All right, and so essentially what you're asking us to do is to indicate our support of this project and encouraging you to go after the tax credits and to do the rehabilitation of these units. Is that?
Yes, sir. I'm asking for three things.
Okay.
That's the first one.
All right.
General support, as evidenced by the Tab I local CEO support letter, I believe, which was in your packet.
And you've done that in the past.
The second thing is to designate by resolution, by the adoption of a resolution, the verbiage contained in the resolution in your package, which says that the property is both blighted, which that's the purpose of the pictures.
I even have a possible resolution that we could consider.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And or that the property is not likely to be rehabilitated without by the private sector without the support of the tax credit program. And the property's been sitting there for quite some time without anyone in the private sector making any sort of substantial improvement to the property. So I believe that it does fit well within the definition of that state code language.
Okay.
So I'm asking you by resolution to name this property as a revitalization area according to that section of the state code. It is only our property, not any of the surrounding properties, just our site alone. And then the third thing is I'm going to ask if Mr. Kelly would please sign a letter that I have given a draft to Cecile, he and Cecile. We submitted a CEO notification letter that had a couple of errors in it. I apologize. Our architect was not very far down the road, and we didn't have the exact square footages, and because it is so competitive, it really needs to be precise, so I made some corrections, just noting that you are aware of the changes, and you are aware of how many square feet we're talking about. So those are the three things that we are asking for.
Okay, now, with the general support of the project, would that be handled by this proposed resolution, Mr. Kelly?
I
I think so, Mr. Mayor. It's been a while since we did one of these. I'm not, and correct me, do we have to come back and have a full public hearing on this?
No, sir. No, sir. For the purpose of application, this is all you have to do, and won't have to have a public hearing down the road.
Yeah, I think this will cover everything that they will need.
If I may comment.
You may.
I have taken the liberty of already providing the resolution that Jen
Right.
provided us. It's already ready and in the packet, so all we have to do, the wording is in the resolution, and I've also done the letter. And a
Okay.
copy of those are both in your packet of stuff, so I think I've got everything together that you need, I think is in your
All right.
packet. So-
And I just have one question, and I'm sure I probably already know the answer, but are there any other competing projects for this money within the town of Abingdon?
Not
That
that
you
I'm
know of.
aware of, no.
Okay.
Okay.
There are many other competing properties, but not within the town that I'm aware of. None
Okay.
within Washington County that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But, Vice Mayor Lowe, your memory is good, because there was a time, a couple of years ago, when there was a couple of competing projects, but they were a buddy agency, and it was this same company. So
It's Washington Court.
It's
I
Washington
don't know if
Court.
you've been by there
And-
recently, but
and
it sure looks so much better. It used to be all white vinyl from the outside. We re-bricked the entire community.
Is that the
And-
one on Colonial Road?
On
Stone Hill.
yeah.
Yes, and if you'll remember, your memory's right. I spoke in paper in behalf of that project with one of her colleagues, Mel.
Melton.
Mel.
Okay. All right, are there other questions at this point in time? Okay, I will propose that I read this resolution for the council's consideration, and then there's also, again, a letter that I think we need to adopt if it be the will of the council to do that. And that being said, let me read the resolution, which is a resolution of the council of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, supporting Theo's Ridge, Virginia LLC in the application to the Virginia Housing Development Authority for rehabilitation of the property known as Theo's Ridge and identified as VHDA tracking number 2015C-55. And whereas the above referenced development is located in a revitalization area in the town of Abingdon, Virginia, and whereas the revitalization area is either blighted or deteriorating, and if not rehabilitated, is likely to deteriorate by reason that the buildings, improvements, or other facilities in such area are subject to one or more of the following conditions: dilapidation, obsolescence, overcrowding, inadequate ventilation, light or sanitation, excessive land coverage, deleterious land use, or faulty or otherwise inadequate design, quality, or condition. And whereas or the industrial, commercial, or other economic development of such area will benefit the county. And I would ask, should it be county or town here?
It's county in the provided resolution, but we can.
It should be the town,
Should
yeah.
be.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
All right, and we would modify that to read, will benefit the town, but such area lacks the housing needed to induce manufacturing, industrial, commercial, governmental, educational, entertainment, community development, healthcare, or nonprofit enterprises or undertakings to locate, remain in such an area. And now therefore be it resolved by the council of the town of Abingdon that private enterprise and investment are not reasonably expected without assistance to produce the construction or rehabilitation of decent, safe, and sanitary housing and supporting facilities that will meet the needs of low and moderate income persons and families in such area, and will induce other persons and families to live within such area and thereby create a desirable economic mix of residents in such area. Council, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
Mr. Mayor, before you do that.
Yes, sir.
Whether we had county before and we're going to substitute with town.
Yes, sir.
I think in this case it would benefit the county too. Could we just put town and county in there?
Would that be agreeable?
Because it's going to benefit the county and the tax base.
All right, very good. Then that being said, we have a suggestion, and perhaps you might even make a motion that we adopt the resolution noting that modification.
I will move that and noting the modification of town and county.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion or comment about this? All right, I ask for clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. Now, I believe there was also a letter of support in here that was presented for our consideration.
Yeah, I would want to know from Mr. Kelly if you think they need to do a separate motion on that letter. It's part and parcel of this entire thing. Do you think they need to do a motion on it?
I think they could just do a simple motion just to authorize me to execute the letter of support
All right.
attached to the resolution.
I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
And I move that we authorize the town manager to execute the letter of support.
I'll second
Okay, we
that.
have a motion and a second authorizing the town manager to enter into the letter of support for this venture. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you very much, and I hope all this will come together. It'd be a great addition.
Look forward to seeing that upgrade.
We hope so, thank you.
And Mr. Moore, can I say
Yes,
just a
sir,
couple?
you surely may.
I wanted to say, because I was on the Abingdon Redevelopment and Housing Board before, and I can tell you one thing is I'm appalled that the HUD would ever look at the conditions that are in there and approve any kind of vouchers now. Obviously, their inspections are a little suspect right now, and maybe it's lack of manpower, I don't know. But the second thing I'd like to say is, these are one of the nicest apartments in Abingdon at one time. In fact, they were the nicest. Mr. Kelly was telling me that when he and Paige were married, they lived there. And so, it takes those and puts them back into a position of where they could be as nice as any other apartments. And the thing I really like about it is that they provide for the Section 8 vouchers. They have 4 already, we'll just add an additional one. But Section 8 vouchers sometimes are hard to come by in nice properties. Now, People Incorporated now have followed what I call the Joe Riley model. And the Joe Riley model is one where that you put people in housing that you would like to live in, that it looks as nice as all the neighbors and fits into those neighborhoods. They usually tend to be scattered sites, not grouped together, but irregardless, there are places where that the community is proud to call those houses home. So thank you all for doing that.
Very good, and thank you for your efforts on this.
Thank you, have a good evening.
All right, you too. Let's see, our next item is a consideration of appropriation of funding for the replacement of a portion of the roof on the town-owned Barter Theater building. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as council is aware, the town of Abingdon owns the Barter Theater building and the connected addition to this building along with this building. There is a section of roof not on the main building, but one of the flat sections of roof out there that has been leaking for the past several years, and there's been minor repairs done over the course of the past several years. After looking into it this year, it was determined by the town staff along with the Barter staff that making repairs was going to be in the neighborhood of about $10,000 to $11,000, and replacing the entire roof was going to be $15,000. So it's my recommendation that, and I've already executed contract with the lowest estimate that we got, which was Cornet Roofing. It's my recommendation that the council appropriate $15,000 from its contingency for the purpose of replacing the roof on the town-owned building that connects into the main Barter Theater.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we do appropriate the funding for this, and we did appropriate some funding for a council retreat. I'd like to rescind that motion and apply that money toward this replacement.
And I'll second that, but just to be clear on that, last council meeting, we appropriated $10,000 from council contingency for a retreat. When we realized that we needed to replace a roof on a building that we own, we are rescinding that appropriation and applying it to the Barter Theater roof. So council will not be spending that $10,000 on a retreat. We will be spending it on the Barter Theater roof.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think there needs to be probably 2 motions made, one to rescind and then one afterwards to make that appropriation.
Okay, so I'll bet Mr. Howard here has made a motion
Since I made the motion to
appropriate for the meeting, I'll go ahead and rescind that motion at this time.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Howard and a second by Vice Mayor Lowe to rescind the authorization that was done at the February meeting to provide $10,000 for a council retreat. And we will revisit that situation in the future, but we'll not be having the retreat at the present time. Is there any comment or question about that motion? Okay, Ms. Rosenbaum, if you call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Mr. Howard, would you care to go again,
Do it
please?
again. And at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion that we take some of this money that was appropriated for the town meeting to be applied toward the roof on the Barter Theater.
So would you make that motion for the $15,000 out of council contingency?
The $10,000 that we said for the retreat, plus an additional $5,000 from the contingency fund.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have, again, a motion to authorize the expenditure of $15,000 to pay for roof repair on the town-owned Barter Theater building. The total allocation being $15,000. $10,000 of that would come from the canceled town council retreat, and then the balance would come from other council contingency funds. Is there any discussion or other comment about it? Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I just say something about that? I know people sometimes question us about money that we put into properties, but the Barter Theater is owned by the town of Abingdon, and our lease with the Barter Theater requires us to take care of the outside of that building, as does our lease with the Historic Society for the outside of their building, and with the Arts Depot for the outside of their building. And those are properties that we can either watch deteriorate or we can take care of them in a timely manner. So anytime that you put something off, it costs more next year.
All right, very good. Any other comments? Okay. That brings us to resolutions, and I have at this point in time, a consideration of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, designating April 6th through the 10th, 2015 as Local Government Education Week. And Mr. Kelly, I know this is a topic that is close to your heart, and would you care to comment about this, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if you'll recall, we've done this every year for the past, since 2012. This was a task that when I was the chairman of the Civic Engagement Committee for BLGMA, that we saw a need for. In the school system, there's very limited amounts of study that is devoted to local government. It's mostly in the civics classes and the government classes. The primary focus is on state and federal government, and as the council is fully aware, people can make much more of a difference at the local level in terms of making things happen and getting ordinances enacted and seeing good things arise for the community than they can in state and federal government. That's not to say that good things don't happen in state and federal government, but it often takes a lot longer, and the citizens don't have as much of a direct impact as they do in local government. So VLGMA sought a resolution through the General Assembly, which was adopted on February the 29th, 2012. I was able to get Mr. Joe Johnson here to be one of the supporters of the resolution that created this. And our ultimate goal is to make this publicly known so that the school systems will start allowing local government officials and teachers to come in and teach segments of what goes on in local government. And one of the most important things that's happened here locally in the last 3 years is that this past year I had a meeting with representatives from Emory and Henry College, from school board member Elizabeth Lowe, and from Mr. Noe with the school board office. And we sat around the table and we actually developed a plan that Emory and Henry would develop a course, and they would come up with a curriculum that would be brought into the school systems here in Washington County. Now, in reality, this course is taking place as we speak this semester, so it's probably not going to make it into the local school systems this year, but ultimately next year it will. And I think if we can get the school kids to start learning about local government at an early age, it will generate some interest later on. And perhaps someday we can look out in the council chambers here and we can see a lot more faces who are attending the meetings and actually participating in the process. So I feel pretty proud that my organization spearheaded this, and we are asking every locality across the entire state of Virginia that is a member of VLGMA to adopt this resolution. So I'm hopeful that the more resolutions like this that get adopted, the easier it will be to teach civic education to our kids. And if we teach it to our kids, they'll teach it to their parents.
Very good, sir. And that's a good way to put it right there. And as we've certainly noted on many occasions, not only can the citizens have an impact on the process of local government, there is no doubt that local government is the level of government that has the greatest impact on the citizens' daily lives. That being said, I'll read this resolution into the record. And I have a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, designating April 6th through the 10th, 2015 as Local Government Education Week. And whereas since the colonial period, the Commonwealth of Virginia has closely held the institutions of local government, and whereas local governments through the Commonwealth provide valuable services to the citizens of the communities they serve, and whereas citizen services such as law enforcement, public health and safety, recreational opportunities, and educating local children are most often delivered at the local level, and whereas in recognition of the work performed by local governments, the Virginia General Assembly on February 29, 2012 designated the first week of April as Local Government Education Week in Virginia, and whereas April 2nd, 1908 was the creation of the council manager form of government in the city of Stanton, Virginia, thereby making the first week of April appropriate for this designation. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, that April 6th through 10th, 2015 is hereby designated as Local Government Education Week, and be it further resolved that the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, and Washington County, Virginia School Board will partner to promote the civic education and engagement in an effort to educate citizens about their local government, strengthen the sense of community, and engage the next generation of local government managers. Council, what's your pleasure regarding this resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass this resolution, or adopt this resolution as presented.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution as presented. Is there any further discussion? I'll just comment that I appreciate the efforts that Mr. Kelly in particular has made through the Virginia Local Government Management Association to promote this. Thank you for all that you've done, and it is important work. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mrs. During? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Moore?
Aye, thank you. Okay, and at this point in time, we come to, matters that are not on the agenda. Now, I will note that there were several items that we did not complete in our work session agenda tonight, which we may want to consider, if, Mr. Kelly, if you think it's appropriate. One was regarding the funding for the Classic Car Club.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I do think it is appropriate to discuss it. After council made the appropriation last month to the car club, if you'll recall, we had a lengthy discussion over making sure that we weren't setting a bad precedent for other organizations to be able to come forward and tap into resources of the town. After we left, I reflected on that for the few days afterwards, and I thought that perhaps something that the council ought to consider instead of outright making an appropriation to the car club is to perhaps make an appropriation to Abingdon Main Street for them to use the funds to promote various events like this in the downtown area. And of course, they're an entity that we ultimately have created, and we want them actively involved in doing things for the revitalization and the growth of the downtown area. And I just thought that maybe the better approach would be to perhaps consider rescinding the appropriation made directly to the car club. Make that or an additional appropriation to Main Street and allow them to designate which types of activities they would like to see in downtown. I think Main Street greatly supports the car club, and I would foresee that they would make this event happen, and then that way we're not setting a precedent for other organizations to come forward for us to either waive fees or to appropriate money for their special events.
What I would like to do, if we're going to do that, is to invite them back after they have met with the Abingdon Main Street to see if Abingdon Main Street is interested in working on the car club, because they've already set their date. They've already gotten the support of the restaurants downtown, and I don't want to do something and because nobody's in the audience, rescind it.
I agree with that.
I think the idea has great merit, and, the main thing is that I believe we'd like to see it happen, but there are, real considerations. So what is your suggestion, Ms. Lowe?
That if Mr. Kelly wants to do it, or Cecile, or whoever you want, to arrange a meeting between Abingdon Main Street and the principals of the Classic Car Club, and see if they can come up with a plan that they are all happy with for that meeting.
Yeah, and I could see this could be a very positive move, Mr. Mayor. We wouldn't have to entertain the Virginia Highlands Festival asking us for money, nor Plum Alley Kiwanis Club asking us for money for either one of those. That could flow through Abingdon Main Street, and then that would kill that precedent of funding these people. And so it would save a lot of, when we go into non-departmental, it will save us a lot of people coming in front of us.
Yeah, because we do have some other precedents that we've set, so I think Mr. Kelly's on target as far as putting it into Abingdon Main Street purview. But, I think we need to we've got the Classic Car Club coming up, we've got Plum Alley Days coming up, and we have already set that precedent. So I would like to see that group meet with Abingdon Main Street through a meeting that, I'm happy for you all to facilitate.
We can kind of refocus how we've been doing work.
Mm-hmm. And it might solve more than one issue, because it might wind up giving Abingdon Main Street the volunteer work that they need to succeed.
Yeah, they very well could.
Mr. Kelly, do we need a motion to that effect, or do you think you could handle it?
Mr. Mayor, because of it ultimately may involve a rescission of a motion, I think the proper procedure, if council would consider it, would be to take my consideration for rescission of the prior motion under advisement and table it until the next meeting.
All right. And I bet we can table it without a motion.
Well, yeah.
All right, and
We
if
just wanted the record to reflect that the consideration is being tabled.
All right, and we'll ask our clerk to put it on the April agenda, please.
And invite the entities to all come to the council and let us know how they communicated.
I do believe, though, that you're right, that somewhere along the line, we need to meet with Avenue Main Street to see how that they feel about administering stuff, things like that. I tell you what, they toughen their board up. They'd have a really good board doing that. And of course, I'm sure there'll be several members of the Highlands Festival and the Kiwanis Club and stuff would love to volunteer for that duty. So.
Okay. All right, any further discussion about that? Okay, now, earlier this evening on our agenda, we had a plan to have a presentation from Chief Sullivan regarding issues that the town was having regarding the transport of mental health patients. Would you care to discuss this evening, Chief, or would you want to do it at another time? Or?
Johnny, you want to do it tonight, or you want to do it at a work session?
Whichever. I mean, I think there'd be more questions and answers in a work session. It might be more conducive to.
Okay. If that's agreeable, then we'll put this on the April 1st or April work session.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Kelly, are there any other loose ends from the work session that I'm leaving out here that need to be addressed at this point?
No, sir, not that let me look at the agenda one last time.
All right.
The only other thing we didn't touch upon was the consideration that Mr. Howard had raised about a walking.
Well,
Yes,
I said
sir.
we could do that at another time. That's not a
Work session.
Okay, so.
When it warms up.
Yeah. Snows off the side.
This is, not enough snow on.
When the mayor's knee has healed.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, when the knee is healed.
How can you brought that up, Howard, when his knee was, he just had surgery?
Yeah, when the snow is off the sidewalk and the knee is healed, that walking tour is probably a pretty good idea. And if we could have that on the April agenda as well, that would be a wonderful thing. At this point in time, is there anyone present who wishes to address the council regarding matters that are not on the agenda? Good evening, Mr. Macbeth. How are you? Oh.
Doing great.
He's electrified.
Electric personality right there.
Yeah, which, Rick Macbeth, 1139 Panorama Drive, Abingdon, Virginia. A couple things, just from observations and everything from the last couple of weeks with all the snow and everything we've had. We're lucky because we have a police officer who lives up the street up and is married to one of your town. So our road gets plowed because they want to get home. So we appreciate that. But the comment that a lot of people had, especially up there, was on the trash removal. We tried to figure out how we were going to get it removed up there because we never could find out from anybody, or there was no notifications. So people were trying to put it out there, and they were going back and forth and never knew if we were going to get anything picked up. And eventually, it finally got picked up this past week. But is there a way that, and you probably could do this through the alert system, to notify, say, hey, we're not going to be doing pickups this time. We're going to be picking up such a day for this area, such a day for this area. Because I made it, there was a Facebook entry, I actually put it up there, asked a question, and all I got an answer was, yeah, we're going to start tomorrow and then rest Tuesday. And I, well, who's starting? Well, you have to go call somebody. And well, wait a minute, you got a lot of elderly people and everything else that are trying to get their stuff and trying to figure out what to do. So as a future thing, when you got situations like that, and trash pickups, it's one of the things, that's one of the things we paid for with our taxes in the town, is that, find a way that we can understand what's going on and when we know what not to put something out there, because it was out there for a week and a half, so.
And I fully understand what you're saying, because the issue, among other things, is that it can be a real job to actually get it to the street and then have a place where you can set it, given all the snowbanks and so forth. But I do recall hearing a thing on the television the other night where the city of Kingsport had fallen into well behind in trash pickups because of the weather, which is something that very definitely occurs, and they were announcing what days or sections of town they were going to pick up on. Do you have any thoughts about that, Mr. Kelly? Or?
Well, I know, and Mr. Dews back there, I know we tried to keep the regular schedule as much as possible, and we did put out some notices on the website and by blast of the wolf whistle, was it the wolf whistle or Facebook?
On social media, but,
Yeah.
I mean, we did try to, we tried to keep, like Mr. Kelly said, we tried to keep on the regular schedule. In the middle of the snow or with some of the conditions on the roads, we couldn't get to some of the roads or some of the houses, specific houses, but it was hard to say going out in the morning what we were going to be able to pick up and what we weren't. When we did know we absolutely weren't going to be able to pick up, I think it was a Wednesday, we put out a notice on social media, and I think the email blast as well, saying we'll pick up Wednesday's route on Thursday along with Thursday's route. So we tried to make the call when we knew we definitely couldn't.
Well, we were
get there, but
getting
otherwise-
that, we always get stuff from the police department. I mean, as far as their social media and get it out on Facebook, they've done a fantastic job. And because they give us weather reports, they give us everything else going on. But we don't see that from the town.
That is the town.
is the
That is the town's marketing director puts it on the
What I'm getting
Facebook.
at is, it's coming from the police department on dealing with those kind of issues. We don't see anything come from the other, other parts.
Well,
That's the face we see is the police
it's the same lady posting on all the social media
department.
sites.
Yeah, but
People do pay attention to our.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
There's more of a variety of stuff going on, and people, I don't take this wrong way, people are inherently nosy, they want to know what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And so, we do have a large number of subscribers, I think we're like over 3,500 now, just for our
One of
page.
them.
But we have, even posted snow clearing things twice. And they were-
Yeah, that's more fun. We got the letter. That's how we got the letter, when it was posted this past week on that. It was from your site, but it didn't come from any other.
That's where we post our information through the media.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And it's put on the town website as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we have limited resources. We don't want to raise your taxes, so we don't have two marketing directors. We only have one. And her office is at the police department.
Well, I do, we can certainly look at a
Yeah.
variety of ways to
Yeah.
get the word out.
Yeah,
But thank you.
that's the main thing.
Do we still have the system that calls that?
Yeah, it's the alert system, that's what's.
Yeah, and because that is the system that we probably, in extreme conditions, that probably is the system that we should use.
And the alert system works for emergency situations. We typically aren't using it for civic announcements or other such announcements that are not considered to be emergency in nature. If there are street closures which could cause emergency situations, rerouting of traffic, those go out in that fashion. Weather alerts that, but typically the civic type announcements like trash pickup's been moved or offices are closed, we do not have a section in our alert system for that. And the main reason is that we've built our system based on what the community has asked us to tell them. If we had enough people who said, we really want a section on, trash pickup, we could create one, but it would just be another investment of funding for that side of the software to make those kinds of announcements. So we've chosen to do it through the social media, which is typically pretty effective, as well as our web presence,
We don't have a Facebook page.
Twitter.
Yeah, we do have a Facebook page. We have two Facebook pages.
They
don't have.
We have a town government Facebook page.
Especially the elderly and everything else.
I don't know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you pointing it out, and it has been a very challenging period here over the last several weeks with the snow that we've encountered. In our work session tonight, we had a general discussion about our town's approach to snow removal, and I'd like to say at this time that we're genuinely appreciative as a council for the very hard work and long hours that our staff put in under extremely difficult conditions to try and help our town and community deal with the snow. We have an emergency services committee which will be looking at our overall program of snow removal and policies and so forth regarding those issues. We continually try to improve, but it has been a challenge for everybody here over the last several weeks, and it'd sure be nice to get through this week without having several.
It would, and I'll tell you something, the town does have a governmental Facebook page that comes up, but it doesn't come up as often, but that has to do with how many times you visit them also. So it has to do with the way you manipulate that whole thing. And if you visit the police department page a lot, that's the one you're going to get the news feed from.
No, actually, I only see it because of the news feed.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
Mr.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you segued right into something that I was going to bring up in council reports. It'd probably be better to do it here because we might need a motion for it.
Right.
And we have sat around and we've talked about it, and we told Mr. Dew how well that we thought he did, and he and his group did with the tireless hours they put in trying to clean the roads, trying to do them in a manner where that safety came first, making lanes open before they made parking available, and not the opposite way around. And so I think that maybe if we could get maybe Kim Kingsley, or maybe, I don't know who we might write it, but I think that we say it on the dais up here, but the people that really need to hear are the people out there actually doing the plowing. And we should send a thank you note to those departments for people like John to read to them and Jamie to read to them to say thank you for doing that work and thank you for spending the hours that you have been with your families. And so if it's a motion, I would move that we send each of those departments a thank you note.
All right.
From the council.
Okay. I'll bet that was a motion.
It was.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to formally thank on behalf of the council the hard work of our staff dealing with the recent snow crisis that we had in town, and to express our appreciation for their hard work and efforts. If you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Horgan?
Aye, thank you, and we'll get that signed.
And on that, Mr. Mayor, would you like to read the letter that we got from the gentleman whose wife was assisted when she wrecked her car?
I'll let you read it if you can find it.
And in the vein of who we're sending a thank you note to, I think that it would be nice if we send one to the fire department, because I know they were out several times with different things, and if they got one too, tell them, and the police department, yes,
Yeah.
and the police department.
Parks and Recreation did too. They were.
Let's take that $10,000 and buy biscuits for everybody.
I don't know if I can find it in.
I emailed it to you guys.
Okay, let me find it in the email.
You might find it now.
Okay, what?
I emailed it too to
While you're-
We
everybody.
need to call the roll.
We did, didn't we?
I believe we did.
All right.
Okay, and while we're doing that, we're still on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone else here this evening who's present who wishes to address the council on a matter that's not on the agenda?
I've got a letter from Mr. Hatcher.
Would you care to read that, please?
Dear Chief Sullivan, I want to thank and commend one of your officers, Eric Lucy, for his assistance on the morning of February 22, 2015. At 4 a.m., my wife was on her way to work with the Department of Homeland Security at Tri-Cities Airport. Her car hit a patch of ice and struck a snowbank at the intersection of Cummings and Winterham Drive. She was unhurt, but unable to move the car, so she called 911. Officer Lucy promptly responded along with a gentleman, I did not catch his name, from the Abingdon Department of Public Works with a plow and salt. I arrived about the same time. With their considerable help, we were able to extricate my wife's vehicle, and she continued on to her work. I appreciate Officer Lucy transporting me back home afterwards. I think public servants do not receive enough praise when warranted, and oftentimes unjustified criticism. Please convey our thanks to Officer Lucy and the gentleman from the Department of Public Works for their assistance. It was greatly appreciated. Sincerely, Bill and Robin Hatcher.
And we are greatly appreciative of their acknowledging that. It's been quite a winter so far. Council, we have several appointments to boards and committees. There are 2 appointments to the Tourism Advisory Committee. We have one appointment, we have, first of all, an appointment of one member on the Tourism Advisory Committee to replace Mr. Jackson, who was a business owner representative who has resigned from the committee. Also an appointment to fill the term of Christine Webb. That appointment would take effect in May of 2015. There is a reappointment of 2 members, Mr. Charlie Day and Bob Baker, on the Board of Building Code Appeals, and both of those are eligible for reappointment. And finally, we have an appointment to the Planning Commission regarding an appointment of member to replace Mr. Matt Bundy, whose term expires on March 1st, 2015, and is not eligible for reappointment. I'm willing to bet that we could probably handle the Board of Building Code Appeals reappointment of Mr. Day and Mr. Baker. Would someone we wish to make that, reappoint those 2 gentlemen to that position?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will move that we reappoint Charlie Day and Bob Baker for another term, please.
All right, and again, that's on the Board of Building Code Appeals.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to reappoint Mr. Charlie Day and Bob Baker to the Board of Building Code Appeals. Any discussion or comment? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, then again, we have appointments to the Tourism Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission. Now, what's your pleasure regarding this? Do you wish to handle these appointments tonight, or do we need to go into executive?
I have a Planning Commission recommendation.
Okay.
I would like to move that we appoint Jan Reeves to the Planning Commission in place of Matt Bundy, whose term has expired on as of Sunday.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to appoint Jan Reeves to the Planning Commission to replace Matt Bundy, whose term expired on March 1st, 2015. Is there any further discussion regarding this matter? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. And
We also have,
Tourism Advisory, I have a question if you're ready for that one.
well, I'm ready for a question.
Okay. Is Christine, she's, her term hasn't expired, but is she taking a leave of absence at Barter?
Yes.
For her birth of her child? Okay, that was the question I had. So, Mr. Mayor, I move that we appoint Kathleen Bundy to serve the unexpired term of Christine Webb as a Barter Theater representative. And I move that we appoint Amy Braswell to the unexpired term of Mr. Carson Jackson as the business owner representative.
second.
Okay, we have a motion to appoint, now, what was Miss Bundy's first name?
Kathleen.
Kathleen Bundy to fill the unexpired term of Miss Christine Webb on the Tourism Advisory Committee, and to appoint Miss Amy Braswell to replace Mr. Carson Jackson as a business owner representative on the Tourism Advisory Committee. And we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. And that brings us to council member reports. And Mr. Humphries, what have you got for us tonight?
Well, we've already dispensed with one of them, and that's the thank you note. And the second one was, I kind of went, and I know council knows this, or probably most of you know this, but we lost 2 very important people to our muster grounds, and actually to the town of Abingdon. We lost Bill Graybill, who was the president of the General William Campbell chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. Bill died on January the 3rd, and Bill had been very active down at the muster grounds for the call to arms for the school children in September, participating for many, many years, and he, along with his wife Carol, who is now the president regent, of the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Black Sword Chapter, worked tirelessly in promoting history and promoting Abingdon and Washington County just in general. The second person we lost was our first person we've lost that has received the Arthur Campbell Award, which was Blair Keller. And Blair, that as everyone that knew him or knew about him or knew of him, was a gregarious man who worked tirelessly. People accuse him of actually working in his sleep to make sure that things were done for the Over Mountain Victory Trail Association, for the Sons of the American Revolution, for the muster grounds, and for the betterment of his community. He was very involved in Boy Scouts, being an Eagle Scout himself, and forming the first chapter with the Green Springs Presbyterian Church of the Boy Scouts, and just many other things that he did and many other accolades he received. And Blair Keller died on February the 18th, one day shy of his 85th birthday. So anyway, we're going to miss both those guys, or I'm going to miss those guys. I hope you all have the feeling, and I'm sure you do, of our loss that we have in the Abingdon family.
Okay, thank you. They will be missed, and we were all privileged to know them, and certainly recognize their contributions to preserving the heritage and trying to improve the quality of life of our community, and they are indeed losses. Vice Mayor Lowe.
Well, I, along with Mayor Morgan and Mr. Kelly, actually interviewed with 2 Emory Henry students for the local government class that Emory Henry has enacted, and it was a very good interview, and I think Miss Deering was invited later. I guess she contacted everybody. We had it was really good to see their interest, and you know, I think that's a good thing that you got started, and I think it got started and completed very quickly, so I commend you for that. Our new knowledge series is now live streamed. Councilwoman Deering and I actually presented a class together last week, and we had about 20 participants. Live stream has become another tool that we are using at the incubator, so the people that come to the live class have the opportunity to interact, and live stream does not, but it has worked out very well, and I thank you for your efforts with that class.
I was going to report that not only do the presenters have a lot to share with the audience, but we learned a lot from the participants, and they were very complimentary, and bring your favorite lunch and just come. You might learn a little something.
And it's actually grown. Our media sponsor now is putting 2 ads a month in the newspaper for us for nothing. So I thank Bristol Herald Courier. Our business challenge will wrap up on March the 10th, I think, is pitch night. We'll get the business plans to the anonymous judges, and we will have the 2 $5,000 awards announcement at the Chamber breakfast on March the 19th.
Very good. Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Howard?
Just to kind of reiterate what our town manager said about 2015, I think this is going to be a good year for the town of Abingdon. A lot of exciting things coming to happen.
I'm optimistic. All right, Ms. Duran?
I was going to talk about new knowledge, but I will say that a lot of times when we're eating lunch, we're stuck in our phones, or we're doing something on our own, and the sharing that went on from the other people in the class. There's people opening up new businesses with great ideas, and you might pick up a tip, but I'd encourage you, it's good fellowship.
Very good. And the only thing I'll add to the good of the cause is that this past month we had the first meeting of what I'm referring to as the Third Plate Book Club, which is a group of local citizens that Mr. Humphreys and I are working with, along with Mr. Kevin Costello, to move forward what I would describe as the Abingdon Food Initiative. It's an effort to really emphasize and build upon our local food efforts, and to help Abingdon become a place, a destination really for local food and unique products and restaurants and so forth in this part of the world. We've had a very useful discussion, and it's an effort that's going to involve restaurants, farmers, the farmers market, some interested citizens, and I'm very excited about the initial program that we had and the discussion. We have some real assets that I believe we can build on, and we'll keep you posted on how these discussions move forward in the near future. Again, we're calling it, the unofficial name is the Third Plate Book Club, because we're utilizing a book by a chef by the name of Dan Barber, who is a noted, well, he's considered to have the best restaurant in the United States, the restaurant at Blue Hill in New York, and it offers some real guidance in terms of what's possible of having your community designated or really recognized as a place for good food. And so we're starting these discussions, and the book has been provided a real focal point for this conversation, and we'll be reporting back with you. I would also note that we have several announcements coming up in the near future. Well, before I do that, Mr. Kelly, do you or Ms. Rosenbaum have anything you'd care to add at the present time?
I just want to remind council of your budget work session meetings in the month of March, and those will be coming up each Wednesday starting at 5:30.
You're kidding. Why didn't you tell us about that earlier?
I know. I thought I'd spring it on you.
That was up your duty.
And I believe the next one is this Wednesday at 5:30. Is that correct? Okay. And, all right. And Mr. Kelly?
No, sir, I have nothing further. I think I've talked too much tonight.
Well, I don't know that I'd agree with you, but, it's, but thank you. All right, again, we are having our first council budget work session meeting at 5:30 on March the 4th. On the 7th, we're having a honeybee symposium that will be held at the Southwest Virginia Higher Education Center that will have representatives of folks who are interested in beekeeping from all over this region will be gathering. I think they're looking for about 150 people to attend that, and there will be several nationally recognized speakers at that event. On March the 7th, Barter Theater will be having the opening for the Miracle Worker, the opening performance at Barter that night. Again, we got another budget work session on March the 11th. Barter opens Love, Sex, and the IRS.
Well, there we go.
March 12th. There you go. Yes, sir. That's much better. March 13th is the Shamrock 4-miler that will be run through the streets of Abingdon. And is that an Abingdon Main Street venture right there? They're one of the sponsors, maybe. All right, JMH. Yeah.
Yeah, they're hosting the beer garden afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
At the finish line.
And
Over at the farmer's market.
very good. That beer may be green even for that occasion too. But I will note that I was astonished at what a turnout we had for that race last year. I think, if I recall correctly, there were over 700 people in that run. It was a first-rate event and a very nice, jump, and it looked like that everybody had a good time even before they got to the beer garden.
Yeah, right.
All righty, another budget work session on the 18th, March the 20th, the Gnome opening performance at Barter Theater Stage 2. The final budget work session, I hope, will be on March the 25th. And then we're also noting that live music at JJ's Restaurant is going to be now happening each weekend. We thank you all who have attended here tonight and for your participation. I'm going to give Mr. Humphries.
I've got one question. I've been dying all night. Floyd Bailey, why are you so dressed up?
Why? I had a friend pass away.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we hadn't seen you in a coat and tie, and that's what was going on.
Well, we know that you're a true professional, but you seldom adorn yourself with a coat and tie. And I'm sorry.
So it's for that reason. Yeah.
Sorry, that's what prompted it. But you always look good, and we're glad to have you here. And thank you for your good service as well.
Mr. Mayor, if I could say one thing. I would like to point out that Mr. Humphries was remiss in not wishing everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day.
I actually wore the tie.
Yes, sorry.
And I would like for everybody to wave and say hello to Miss Eisenhower, because she texted and told me that she was watching, and we expect to see her back in April.
Hello.
All right. And I will make one further comment. We put an awful lot of stock into St. Patrick's Day, but for those of us who are of Welsh extraction. March the 1st is St. David's Day, and the Welsh are not the only ones that have fun this time of year. So keep that in mind for all your friends who are named Morgan or Llewellyn or something like that.
And we did give you a little small parcel of land.
It was small. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We'll see you again in April.
Oh, yeah, man.